Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Kat and my channel is about all things bullet journaling, stationery, and books. In this video, I'm going to be talking about everything I read in February and setting up my journal for March. I'm really excited because I read a lot this month. This is probably the most I've read in a really long time. I'm going to start by talking about each of the books that I read, and I'll do my best not to share any spoilers, but there are going to be spoilers in what I'm actually writing in my journal. The first book I read in February was a romance novel called Misconduct by Penelope Douglas. The story is set in New Orleans, and it starts at a Mardi Gras ball where Easton, our main female character, meets her love interest, Tyler. They have really good chemistry, and soon after, Easton becomes a high school history teacher. And who should be in her class? Tyler's son. This book started off really strong, and when I was first reading it, I really loved the chemistry between Tyler and Easton, and I kind of couldn't put the book down. But a little over halfway through the book, the book really kind of fell off for me, and I actually had a bit of trouble finishing it. I gave this book a 7.5 out of 10 rating, but honestly, looking back at my other reads for the month, I think it was closer to a 7 out of 10. I really liked Easton as a character, but I wasn't in love with Tyler, especially as the book carries on. Still, if you are a fan of romance novels, this had its good moments, for sure. Because this wasn't really my favorite book, I only dedicated one page to the decoration and writing, and I didn't actually have a lot that matched what was going on in the book, so I drew a little Mardi Gras mask that I think matches what Easton was wearing in the first scene in the novel. And then I added a little bit of black lace just because it's like a sexy romance novel. So that's what I did for my journal setup. My second read for the month of February was also a little bit of a letdown, which is why I also only dedicated one page for this book. The second book I read was a romance fantasy novel called Bewitched by Laura Thalassa, and I have this PET tape with a bluish magical item, which kind of matches the way that magic is described as blue smoke pretty often throughout the book. So this book is about a witch named Celine who really wants to get into an academy for witches. She keeps getting rejected, and she is told that she needs a magical animal companion and to go on this really impressive magical quest. So Celine goes to South America, and she ends up awakening this magical being called Memnon, who thinks that she is his long-lost wife who cursed him. Okay, so the premise I think is really interesting, and I like the animal companions, but to be honest, this book was a letdown. And there is this thing where whenever Celine uses magic, it eats at her memory, and while amnesia is a big part of the plot, I found it hard to get into the book because something would happen and then she would just forget about it, and it kind of felt like as a reader, you just take 2 steps back every couple of pages, which was really annoying. And there was also just a lot going on in this book. Like, there were so many different elements, multiple love interests, like a best friend, enemies, a secret society. So there was a lot going on, and I think I understand that it was part of the world building because it's the first book in this series, but I think there were just too many elements for it to be really well executed. So this book was a bit disappointing, which is a shame because I really enjoyed the Four Horsemen series, also by Laura Thalassa, and in general, I do really like her books. The third book I read was The Capital of Dreams by Heather O'Neill. I love Heather O'Neill as a writer, and I love her writing style. This book was a literary fiction novel, and it was sort of like a dark fairy tale with magical realism, but I think the best way to describe it is probably just literary fiction because it explores really serious topics like war, the experience of girls and women and children, and it's written in such a way that is more poetic than whimsical, and it's dark in a way that is different from someone who might think of dark when you enjoy reading dark romance or dark fantasy. So this is a completely different type of dark, and it's more of a kind of sad, depressing kind of dark. My spread for this journal, I think, is a bit off in terms of capturing the darkness, but I was trying to capture some of the elements of the story and the fairy tale aspect. So, for example, the little book in the middle is inspired by one of the quotes in the novel, "Pink is a state of mind." And I also added 2 more quotes from the book, which I really loved. So the first one is, There was something about her spirit, the spirit of every girl, that was so, so beautiful. And the second quote is, "Never be ashamed of your worst quality. Our weaknesses are what make us unique." And I really love that. It's just so beautiful, and it's just really like Heather O'Neill's writing style that I really, really enjoyed. I try to add some more dark elements by adding in these like dark fairy tale-esque stickers into the sides of the setup. And I really love the way it turned out. I just don't think that it's dark enough, and it doesn't quite convey the tone of the book. But still, I had fun making it, and it was really fun to put together. Overall, it was a really good read, so it got an 8.5 out of 10 rating for me. It was just not my favorite Heather O'Neill book I've ever read. Next, now we're getting into the books that I really loved this past month. I finally got my hands on a copy of Twisted Lies by Anna Huang from the library, and I loved it. I was so surprised by how much I loved it. If you're new to my channel, last month I read Twisted Hate, and I listened to it as an audiobook, and I read the others in the series as well, but Twisted Hate was definitely not my favorite. I did really enjoy this series though, so I wanted to finish it, and I was so surprised at how much I loved this last book. Twisted Lies is the fourth book in the Twisted series, which are a series of romance novels that can be read as standalones, but are really better if you read it in the order that it was published. And each book follows the love story of a different woman in a friend group. So this story follows Stella, who is a fashion blogger and influencer, and Christian, who is a wealthy CEO / head of a security company. And he happens to be Stella's landlord because he owns the building that she lives in. I won't get into too many details so as not to spoil too much, but I really liked Stella and Christian as characters. I really loved their chemistry. I mostly liked their storyline, and I really enjoyed that the friend group was more present in this story. I really love the friendship dynamics that were developed in this book as well, and the final chapters were so perfect for the end of this series. I found myself really wanting to keep reading and not wanting to put this book down, so for me, this book was a 9 out of 10. The only reason why it was not a 10 out of 10 was because of like two little quirks of mine, and it's really just a personal preference thing. It's really small, and I still absolutely love this book. For the book spread, I found a sticker that I think looks so much like Stella, which was so exciting. I mean, you cannot look at this sticker and tell me it does not look like Stella. And I have this washi tape and these little plant stickers, and Stella really loves plants. And so I think that everything was really cohesive, and I'm really, really happy with how this spread turned out for my journal. Oh, yes, and I have this little croissant sticker because Stella likes to journal, and in one of her gratitude journal entries, she mentions that she is grateful for croissants. Same, Stella, same. And I know these books have been out for some time, but it was kind of sad that the series was over when I finished reading this book, and I really like the Twisted series overall. So now I kind of want to go back and reread all of the books again as physical copies instead of the two that I listened to as audiobooks. I highly recommend this series for anyone who loves reading lighthearted romance novels. Next, I read Heartless by Elsie Silver, and oh my goodness, swoon. I love this book. I love the dynamic between Willa and Cade. Heartless is the second book in the Chestnut Springs series by Elsie Silver, and similar to the Twisted series, you can read each book in this series as a standalone, even though it's better to read in order. So I mentioned last month in my video for my reading journal that I had read Hopeless, and I had tried to read Flawless, but I couldn't really get into it. Flawless is the first book in the series, and Hopeless is the fifth book in the series. And I didn't completely love Hopeless, but it did make me want to read the other books. So I read Heartless, which is the second book in the series, and I'm so glad that I did because this was such a great read. The story follows Cade, who is a grumpy cowboy / single dad, and he hires Willa, who is the best friend of his brother's fiance, to be a nanny to his 5-year-old son, Luke. And it's just such a great mix of cute and wholesome and a lot of really funny, quirky moments. But then there's also a lot of like really steamy, sexy romance. And it's just so great. Like Cade as a character is so great. Willa as a character is so great. Luke, who is Cade's son, is also super cute. And it was just a really fun book. So this book was a 9 out of 10 read for me, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I think I will try to finish out the series and read the other 2 books in the series, which I did actually. I did read Powerless this month as well, so I'll get to that in a bit. As for my reading journal setup, I have these little post-its that are shaped like lettuce, and I can't believe that it actually came in handy, but lettuce, believe it or not, is a part of the story, and so I used these little lettuce post-its as part of the decoration. And then I had this washi tape that was very, very fitting for, I think, this type of book. And then I have a set of really beautiful horse stickers, and of course they're on a ranch, and they do rodeo and things like that, so I thought this would go really well. So overall, I really also love the way that my journal spread turned out for this one. Next, I also read Phantasma by Kaylee Smith. This one I listened to as an audiobook, and it was the only audiobook that I listened to this month. I really loved this one, and the narration was fantastic. This story is set in New Orleans, and our main character, Ophelia Grimm, is a necromancer. After the death of her mother, her sister goes missing, and Ophelia believes that she went into this haunted mansion competition called Phantasma that is run by devils, and she goes in to look for her sister. So Ophelia needs to complete 9 challenges, and each of these challenges are inspired by one of these circles of hell. And she meets this phantom called Blackwell, who is a big part of the story. She meets a ghost cat, she meets a bunch of other contestants, she finds out more about her sister, her magic, and it's just a really good story. I think that for me, this was an 8.5 out of 10. There were just a few tiny little things that made it slightly less enjoyable than Twisted Lies or Heartless, but really it's completely just personal preference. I highly recommend this book as an audiobook, and I'm sure it'd be great if it was read as a physical book as well. And I'm really excited because I saw that Kaylee Smith is coming out with a second book, I think in this series, called Enchantra, and I think it's coming out in April, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure if it's considered a duology or something longer, because I think Phantasma on its own was pretty complete in terms of plot, which I really appreciate. But either way, I'm really excited for that, and I really enjoy this book. For my reading journal, I had a hodgepodge of different stickers that I have from Journal Say, from Sticky, from this sticker book I have as well. I think my favorite part of my setup is the cat. I found a white cat that I think could be Poe, who is the ghost cat that appears in the story. And then I also really love the sticker that I got on Etsy, which is a pile of red books, and it really matches, I think, the tone and the general ambiance of the story. The next book I read was Powerless by Elsie Silver, and this is the 3rd book in the Chestnut Springs series. So this book follows the story of Jasper, who is a famous hockey player, and Sloane, who is a ballerina. And this is a friends to lovers romance story, and I did not really love it. And it's not because it's a sports romance. I know that's why I said I couldn't really get into Flawless, because that one is a sports romance, but I actually really enjoyed the sports elements to it. I like the hockey stuff, I like the dancing aspects as well. But I think it was more just that there was the premise of the story I did not find completely believable, and that kind of set the tone for the entire book. So I finished the book, and I think I still enjoyed it overall, but I did not love it. And honestly, I think it could come down to 2 things. One, I just really, really loved Willa and Kate as characters, so I think I just didn't like Jasper and Sloane as much compared to those. And I read so many great books this month that it just wasn't my favorite overall. But I think that if you enjoy, romance, if you enjoy sports romance, I think you could really enjoy this book as well. And then in terms of the decor for this setup, I only dedicated 1 page, and I had very little that related to this book, so I didn't have a lot of stationery that matched, but I kind of went with a wintry sticker thing because hockey, And then I went with like these little pool balls at the bottom because there's a scene where people play pool. But it's a bit of a stretch. It absolutely does not perfectly match the book or the cover. Last but not least, I read King of Wrath, which is the first book in Anna Huang's King of Sin series. This is a billionaire romance series where each book is inspired by one of the 7 deadly sins. And it's an ongoing series, which means that not all of the books have been published yet. The King of Sins books is set in the same universe as the Twisted series, which is kind of cool. So Dante Russo, who is the main male character in this book, is introduced in Twisted Lies. Or at least I think he was. I can't remember if he appears in an earlier book, but he definitely appears in Twisted Lies because he's one of Christian's clients. And Christian and Stella also make an appearance in King of Wrath. King of Wrath follows the story of Dante and Vivian, who is a jewelry heiress and luxury event planner. This is a marriage of convenience story, and I really love this one too. I could not put this book down. Anna Huang also does a really good job of introducing new characters in her universe because you meet some of the characters that the subsequent books in this series will be about. So I'm really excited to read the next book in this series. But yeah, I really loved the chemistry between the characters, the plot. It was just really a really fun, easy read. For my journal, I only dedicated 1 page to this book, and it's not because I didn't love the book, but because I kind of lacked the stationery for a larger spread. However, I did find this sticker that I think looks a lot like Vivian, if she was trying to be casual. This is kind of how I picture her, super confident with her red lipstick, her accessories. And yeah, I'm really glad I had a sticker that looked like Vivian. All right, so now we're going to fill out all of my reading journal tracking things. So I'm going to start by coloring in my bookshelf with the 8 books that I read this month. I can't believe I read 8 whole books. That's kind of crazy to me. I really have not read this many books in a really long time. And I had 3 books that were a 9 out of 10 rating this month. But I think if I think back on which one I liked the most, I would say Twisted Lies kind of wins by a little bit. So that will go into my book bracket for the best book of February. And then next, I am going to fill in and color in my 2025 tracking for the format, genre, and method of the book. This month, 7 books were read as physical books and 1 book was an audiobook. All 8 books were works of fiction, and I had 3 library books, 4 books that I bought new, and 1 book from Audible. I also spent a total of $33.29 this month, which is better than last month, but hopefully next month that amount will be 0. Next, I'm just going to fill out the list of the books I've read so far, and given how much I'm reading, I'm going to stop skipping the lines when I'm writing a new title. After that, I'm going to fill out my monthly page setup for February with everything that I read and my favorite book of the month, which was Twisted Lies. And finally, I actually did read another book this month. I reread June 1st by Jennifer Hartman. This was my favorite book of 2024, and I just had this urge to pick it up again, and I love this book. This book is so good. I cry every time I read it. I highly recommend it. It's like crying in a really good way. Oh, I love this book. And now going to the back of my journal, I'm going to glue in all of the book covers from all of the books that I read this month. Please ignore my awful gluing skills in these 2 pages. I don't know why I always struggle to glue down the covers. This should honestly be the easiest part. Now we're going to set up the March setup, and I wanted to keep it really simple because I'm actually not sure how much I'm going to reference these summary pages, like these monthly summary pages in my journal, but I've kind of started with it in January and February, so I want to keep going. I do feel like sometimes I repeat a lot of the information though, so that's why maybe next year I'll consider doing something different, but we'll see. But for this setup, I basically have this giant thick washi tape that is this beautiful green color with white polka dots, and I used it for the upper border and the lower border. And then I use a green calligraph pen to write out the month and then the different sections that I'm tracking. I also have a little section to the right side of the page for the best book of the month, and then I drew little vines on it. So yeah, super simple setup, but just kind of keeping to what I've done in previous months. I'm actually really curious. Let me know down below in the comments, is there a part of your reading journal from previous years that you go back to time and time again? I'm really curious to know what it is and what works really well for you. And finally, I'm just going to do a final flip through of everything that we've done today, starting from the beginning. I think that looking back on these pages, my two favorite reading journal pages that I've set up this month are my spread for Twisted Lies and my spread for Heartless. I really love the way that they turned out, and it's probably because I really love the books too. But yeah, I had so much fun with my reading journal this month, and I can't wait to set things up for everything that I'm going to read in March. So if you have watched all the way to the end, thank you so much. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.